Welcome to the Green Grassroots of Football with me, Andy Glover, and that's it. It's like a ghost town around here, as both Mark and Ben have deserted me. Ben to coach his new girls team, a thoroughly acceptable reason, and Mark to go to the theatre. So before we go further, I would just like to thank our sponsor, Rachel's Bookkeeping, for all of your bookkeeping needs. But fear not, brave listeners. As Michael Jackson said, you are not alone. And yes, I was tempted to sing that part, but in the end, wisely decided against it. So tonight, I am joined by long-time listener, first-time caller, Simon Aston. Welcome, Simon.
Hello, Andy. Thanks for having me.
That's okay. Simon is one of the coaches with me at the Under-8 girls team. So if I can just hand over, I'll let Simon introduce himself and perhaps tell us a bit about himself, his background, and why he decided to get involved in football and coaching.
Love to. Thanks for first of all, thanks for not singing during that introduction.
You're welcome.
Very much appreciated.
You're welcome.
And, yes,
even though I've got the voice of an angel, I thought,
Well, I don't know that yet, to be fair, so I could have judged that myself. Anyway, two really good reasons for people not to be here, for Mark and Ben not to be here, so that's absolutely fine. But no, great to be here. So my name's Simon. For those who don't know me, I coach with Andy in the Under-8s girls team here at Fry's. I've been doing that for less than a year at this point. So we joined through my daughter, who plays in the team, just a couple of weeks before last year's girls' presentation evening. Remember it really, really well. But it's something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. I always thought when I played football as a young adult that I would like to get into coaching one day. Kids came along, as they tend to do, but never forced that on the kids. We tried once with Lottie with the Wildcats several years ago. 4 weekends in a row resulted in 4 bouts of crying in a row. So we gave it a couple of years, and she learnt that 2 of her best friends in school played at the club as well, and that was the catalyst for her to come back. And then when she did, I thought, here's my opportunity. And now here I am.
Excellent. Okay, so on to the episode, and tonight we are discussing Simon's near enough 1 year anniversary, as he said, of being involved, and looking at what he has learned in that year and the realities of the realities of what the level 1 course does not give you compared to what you've actually done over the year. So for me, I started my coaching journey in 1994. However, it was only when I began my second team in 2002 that I decided to go the formal route and get qualified. My first team being very much a mentored route, and I undertook my level 1 coaching in 2002, followed by my level 2 in 2004. I did undertake my youth modules, and for anyone coaching children, would recommend them. Taking level 1 and 2 in 2012, which is when my current under-16s were just starting, and then I did the level 3 in 2017. But I believe even that is much changed, so I'm relying on Simon's more up-to-date knowledge of the level 1 and the various things to hopefully guide us tonight. As usual, I like to start with a little quote or stat, and so this time we're going to go with Friedrich Nietzsche. There are no facts, only interpretations. So I think it's quite relevant with this because everyone tells you how to do things, and then you get there and it's never that, is it?
Absolutely.
So I got a few things written down here. Where should we start? What do you want to start with? I mean, I've got a few notes. I mean, fixture congestion was one you gave me. Do you want to start there? I mean, because obviously that's not coached on the things like that are not on the level 1 course, are they?
They're really not, no. And actually, what was most eye-opening, I think, in the time between concluding the level 1 course, which was all kind of delivered online. It was online webinars, seminars, that kind of thing. Really, really interesting, fascinating, and really gripped me. And the one main takeaway I took from that was that sessions should be all geared towards young people having fun, first and foremost.
Yes.
And that is clearly what we do at Fry's. I see that right throughout the age groups. What it doesn't teach you is everything else that comes with it. So there are some suggestions of games that you can play during training sessions and warm-ups and things like that. But all the logistics of being involved in coaching a team, administrating a team, managing a team, supporting a team, individuals, parents, the politics, the dynamics, the mood swings, all of those kind of things. You think you know what you're getting into when you have a child of your own age, and that's usually the catalyst for people to come into it. I know you have a child of your own age, and you think, well, I can manage them, okay, so I'll just transfer that. It's a whole different ball game. So what was really revealing and did take me a while to come to terms with over the past year was what the course doesn't teach me, which is everything else.
It's interesting, actually, because I listed where I did all my courses. Every single one was face-to-face. And obviously, between me doing mine right up until 2017,
Yep.
was COVID.
Yeah.
And there was this sudden rush to get everything online, even the first aid. There was a pause, a good pause, where almost every coach went out of date on their first aid. They just couldn't do first aid face to face, because the whole point of the first aid was you must do your. I think the body they used was called Sally, and you had to do your CPR sort of palpitations, whatever it's called. You had to do that and show them you could do it. Now you don't. Even that is now an online.
Even
course.
that is theoretical.
Yep.
Wow.
Everything it's completely online.
Wow.
So you do your introduction to first aid, or just your basic sort of recertification, all completely online.
Wow.
Whereas me, I've been doing it, like I said, because when we did it, if you become a level 1 certified coach and you get your, excuse me, it's slipped my mind, but you can become a level 1 coach, which is what we all do, but you can also become, I can't remember what it's called, but like a qualified coach with the county or through the FA.
Okay, kind of certified.
Certified, yeah. And if you do that, you then have to renew your qualifications every 3 years. So your level 1 is fine.
Yeah.
But you have to renew your first aid and your safeguarding every 3 years. Now, this was before the FA brought in more recently. You must do your safeguarding every 3 years.
Yeah.
Before that, if you were like a certified coach, then you must renew your safeguarding and your first aid. So every 3 years, we'd go to some place, whether it was head of the GFA or Somerset FA, or just we get them down here, and every 3 years we do the whole CPR, all that sort of thing. If you didn't do that route, then you just had your level 1 and that was it. But you weren't considered a qualified manager. And one of the things, when they brought in the charter standard, every team had to have at least one coach who had the sort of certification.
The whole suite,
Yes.
basically,
And renewed it every 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they've brought in, you must renew your child protection online every 3 years for everybody. So it's almost like, well, why don't everyone just do the first aid as well? And then everyone has got this certification across the board. You know?
Yeah, there's a consistent base level, I suppose.
But a lot still don't. I mean, it's not. It's 3 hours every 3 years. It's not massive.
It's quite tame, isn't it?
It is, but
it's given me the prompt to go and do it.
Yeah,
actually,
but
just from this
to be
conversation.
honest, as the welfare officer, trying to get people to do their 3 hours every 3 years, it's difficult. You're chasing, but hey, you know, that's another different podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. Okay, so you're leading this podcast. So let's have a look at what sort of things do you want to go with then?
So there's a few things really. One is
Pick one.
One is I guess that if you start from step one, and I know you've done previous podcasts, particularly with James around becoming new manager, and that's much more around the kind of the logistics and the administration and the conversations I remember about WhatsApp groups and these kind of
that
things.
should becoming the actual manager himself, and
Indeed, correct.
how it means picking the team, and yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, but I remember those steps that again one of those first things that the course doesn't teach you is how to make it known that you would like to help with coaching.
No.
Of course, there's a few different ways of doing that. You could be bold as brass and go up to somebody and say, "Hello, I'd like to be a coach, please," and hope you're talking to the right person or you get directed to the right person, all of that kind of thing. Most of us are pretty shy, I find, and pretty timid, and we put on an act and pretend to be kind of outgoing and confident, and eventually you hope that starts to come naturally. But to start with, we're not. And particularly when going into something that I hadn't ever done before.
Yeah.
So I remember my wife, who plays for the Fry's ladies team, did some early introductions with the partner of another teammate who was also a school mum friend, but who was also a coach, and it kind of organically went from there. To the first introduction, which was, hello, you're Simon, I hear you'd like to help out.
Yeah.
Yes, please, very
That
happy
was me.
to.
Yeah,
that was you, that was you. Andy.
Phil,
Yeah.
you're talking about Phil.
Yes.
He had said to me, Lottie's dad Simon is interested in getting involved. I was like, oh, okay, yep, cool.
And away we went.
Yes.
And away we went. And so that was the first one, was you have to kind of get over yourself a little bit, really, if you want to be involved. And particularly if, again, some of those other conversations you've had on the podcast have been where people have been approached to say, oh, I think you might be a really good fit. Would you like to get involved? Whereas it was the other way round for me, because I'd only kind of done a little bit of bringing the kids down. It had only been a few weeks. So needed to kind of make it more known that I was interested in helping out and not just standing on the sidelines and watching. And actually, that was one of the catalysts at the start, because one of those early tournaments that my daughter played in, oh my God, it was so frustrating in a great way, because I would watch it and think, oh, I wish I could help them. I wish I could help teach them the best places to stand and when to go and the stuff, again, that you've talked about on the podcast. Pass, move, and space was one of the third pillars of that, I remember.
Which
from
the girls love shouting back. The key words. What are the key words, girls? Pass, move, space. What does it mean? I don't know.
But it's in there. It's in
there somewhere.
So yeah, there were those kind of those were the things that grabbed me.
Well, it's interesting actually, because obviously you came along end of the under-7s. Had Lottie taken to it as a under-5 wildcat,
Yeah.
there's a chance you'd be the manager. Because if you've heard the podcast before, Mark right from the start is looking around going, I need managers, and he's very much going forward saying, do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? Do you
I
want to
remember
do
the
it?
episode where you talked about it was July or something like that, and he needed the whole host.
Yeah, for his team and the team above him that basically came in like a 1 month period.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he does it every year with the new Wildcats. It's very much looking around going, okay, who here could be a good coach? So yeah, had Lottie taken to it, he'd have gone to you. Because you'd come into an established team.
Correct.
So there's a completely different dynamic. So that's one interesting thing about wanting not just coming to a team, but wanting to be involved. It's whether you're there at the start and they're looking around for, okay, we need to set up. And there's 3 or 4 who say, yeah, we want to do it. Or you're coming to it late, and there's already an existing dynamic. And there's also the issue, I know there have been teams where people have come along and there's sort of 2 or 3 and they've said, well, actually, we are the 3. We've come together, we want to do this is us.
Yeah.
And I have known teams who've basically said, no, thank you.
More of a closed shop, effectively.
Yeah. Thanks for the offer, but we have got ourselves a very existing dynamic, and usually because they're already 3 existing friends who've got very specific ideas. They might even play together for another football team as adults, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so they've all got kids the same age. They've done that, and that's how they do it, sort of thing. So yeah, that's an interesting one to sort of start off with. How you come into a team.
Yeah, how you introduce yourself, and then
which is never mentioned on the level 1 course, is it?
No. So no, it is as I said earlier on, repeating slightly, but it really gripped me, that course. It affirmed everything in my head. Said I want to do this. I want to get involved. And again, in your in some of those earlier podcasts, you've talked as a collective about the passion you need to do it. So, and I was thinking about this earlier on, because am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for my daughter? Am I doing it for other kids? Am I doing it for a club, sense of community? I think it's all of those things.
It has to be all of them, yes.
I think you need to have all of those ingredients, because if I don't enjoy doing it, I'm not going to be sensible on a Friday night to be ready up first thing on Saturday morning down there to help set up and then coach training.
The key to there is if your daughter says, I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, quite.
Now I say that. I mean, I've got no children in the team. I have got a granddaughter in this team. I have a grandson in my last team. My last team wasn't set up for any of my grandchildren. It was set up with no actual relatives involved, and because he was actually living in Radstock at the time, and they've moved. And I would like to have had him involved, but and then they've moved closer. I think when they were under 11s or 12s, and then he joined at that point as a regular. Amara, yes, I've spoken before. I was ready to give up. I've done 30 years. This is my 30th year. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And then my daughter's like, oh, you'll be her manager. I'm like, okay.
And then you're hooked then for another decade.
I am, but if she decides next year she wants to do something different, I'm still in.
And likewise,
likewise. But I go back to my first team I ran, and it was an eye opener for me. As under 16s, the final year, the best team around were St Vallier that year. There were other teams as we got older, but St Vallier were the best team in that final. Or still, so sort of one of the best two teams was St Vallier. And I can remember playing them, and as a younger team, they were good. And the manager's boy was one of the key players. As under 16s, he was a small, slightly overweight boy, stood watching in a subs kit every week. Sometimes not even there.
Wow.
And it was like, he ain't good enough. I spoke to the manager, he says, yeah, he's just not good enough. But to the manager, he was like, this is the team, this is what the team needs. Whereas the same year, Longwell Green, they were first division team until about under 14s, and they dropped. And speaking to other people, not to the manager, it was like his boy was the goalkeeper. And they said he kept with his boy. His boy was no longer good enough, but it was his boy. So he kept him in goal. They started to lose, better players started to leave.
Yeah.
So there's that two different stories where the manager kept with his son and they dropped and better players left. And the other manager was like, sorry son, you're just not good enough. And the better players stayed, and they were like, I think they were runners up in the final year of the A division sort of thing. So, and like I said, for me, it's the granddaughter gives up again. I was going to give up, and now I'm hooked again. So she gives up. It's like, oh, bye. Anyway, team, what are we doing now then? So yeah,
indeed, and I said, likewise that I'm kind of in it now. Whether my daughter decides to carry on with it or not, because ultimately it's her choice. There's if she wants to get up in the morning, put the shin pads on, and come down no matter the weather, though it tends to be called off for the right reasons, of course, when the weather's not so good, then I'll keep going with her. And if she decides she doesn't want to, I'll want to do it anyway, to be quite frank. And there's been a couple of occasions where she's been a bit under the weather, or because these are 7 and 8 year old girls, of course there's going to be an occasion where they don't particularly fancy it.
You've also got I won't say added bonus, but you've also got the slight detour, as it were, of your son as well.
Indeed.
So if she does decide that's it, and your son's involved, you could still be involved, but like, okay, I'll still help out the girls when they need me, but actually, I've got a son who actually wants to be playing as well. Because bear in mind, they play if your son's playing and your daughter's playing, they're at the same time.
We've had this conversation with my wife several times.
So if Lottie was to give up,
yeah,
it straight away focuses the mind of who you're supporting then on a Sunday, even if you were still helping out with the girls.
Indeed.
And likewise, if your son was to give up and Lottie carried on, well, there you go. There's the focus on where your energies lie as well.
Well, quite. And he's in the place for the under 6 boys, for context, for listeners.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah. So they will. So next year they will start. They've had one kind of enterprise friendly.
Yeah.
A few more friendlies planned over the next couple of months, and then I'll start proper league fixtures next year. So that certainly that logistical dilemma that other parents face will start kicking off from August and September next year. But to be frank, I haven't been tested yet for that time. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, I think I'm pretty hooked. I mean, you do build up an affinity, if you like, that kind of that role model sense of having that responsibility, I guess, with young people, and particularly for a group which we've seen, and again, you've talked about it on another podcast, that team and community spirit that is fostered here at Fry's, which I do see particularly the logistics of coming in the clubhouse after home matches and putting on the chips that we always do, and it fosters that sense of community, and we do that for the opposition as well. You can't help but be hooked by that.
Yeah,
I don't think.
definitely.
And we're very lucky in the under-8s, so I hope you'll agree that they're all great girls.
Oh, definitely.
As well. They're
Definitely.
fantastic.
My granddaughter aside, no. Luckily,
No, she's included.
Luckily, none of my family listen to this podcast, so I'm okay. I can say that. No, I didn't mean it. I'm joking. Yes.
They are all. Yeah, they're all. So I'm pretty sure that I'm in it now. And of course, the other I can't really get away from it either, which I know you passively referenced in a previous podcast as well, is that I live just the other side of the main football pitch, so I can watch training and matches and everything else from out of the front of my house, so I can't escape it,
Yeah.
even if I ever wanted to.
You've got
Not
no choice in the matter now, have
no,
you?
no, absolutely not. No, I'm fully invested. No, fully invested. And actually, there is a great benefit as well if there are other parents who are thinking about. The reason for talking a few moments ago about that feeling of shyness and a lack of confidence to start with is because there will probably, very likely, be other parents who think, I'd quite like, I wouldn't mind actually, I wouldn't mind helping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but don't ever feel like they, perhaps worry that it might be a closed shop that you've referenced other places. I know and you know full well that it isn't,
Yeah.
but people might be a bit worried or scared.
Well,
about
I'm not going to say
speak
it isn't
up.
a closed shop, but I'd say 99 out of 100 are open. In
Yeah,
that sense.
yeah,
If there's a
indeed.
closed shop. It
Yeah,
will be quite literally 1 in 100 if there is a closed
Yeah, it's
shop.
very,
set-
very rare
set up.
occurrence. Yeah,
Yeah.
very rare occurrence. But I say it because I've gone from that to that kind of, not sure how to go about this, to being utterly hooked.
Yes.
It was in weeks, to be fair, but certainly now nearly a year on. Yeah, fully invested.
Well, I was, and as I said, I think my original setup, I was just given a bag and a bucket after watching them for one game, my very first team, and I was like, yeah, I'm in anyway. And I watched them. A bunch of kids, I didn't know who they were, and I was still like, yeah, I'm in there. So,
Yeah, indeed.
you are, you absolutely are. Okay, so that's sort of joining them. What next?
There was God, it's an annual frustration, isn't it? And this could be an entire podcast in itself, to be fair. It's the weather and the frustration that brings.
Is it the weather or the fixtures you want to move on to? Because they're linked, aren't they?
They are linked. Yeah. So that's the
Weather. Let's go weather first then.
weather first. So I've had to learn, and this is where it's been very helpful to be coaching with a manager who, I hope you don't mind me saying, has been doing it for many years, decades.
Decades.
So I'm afraid so. Been there, seen it, and done it. And the weather from a welfare perspective is really critical. So I've found myself frustrated on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, as every other amateur coach in the world will have been as well, that rain stops play. And that, it's not just rain, to be fair. One was I remember one a few months ago, a frozen pitch. We'd had frost and sub-zero temperatures overnight for a couple of days. The Friday night wasn't, and we thought we'd be absolutely fine. And actually, the pitch was pretty hard on that Saturday morning. And in retrospect, the game had quite rightly been postponed. So I've had to learn to get over the frustration, I suppose,
This is it. I mean,
of the
from a
weather impact in the fixtures.
From a welfare perspective, cold weather that gives hard surfaces that even adults, adult matches are postponed because you slide in, it will cut the legs up. Children, not just that, but they're frozen. They're so much smaller.
And we've
they
seen that so
can't
many
keep
times,
their
haven't
body-
we?
They can't
Yeah.
keep the body heat
Yeah.
in. And then wet weather, you think, oh, it's only wet, but the soggy surfaces, it becomes a much more dangerous thing to play on when there's standing water. You think, oh, it's just water on the
Absolutely.
pitch, but actually it's quite dangerous to play on that sort of surface. And unless you've seen it and played on it before, I mean, it's very difficult to understand why that's quite dangerous, but it is, because when they start sliding in and they're sliding 30 yards and going through, and then somebody else get their foot stuck in that wet mud.
Yep.
And that's it. What you don't realise is somebody can get their foot planted and stuck in that soggy mud, and somebody else slides 30 yards and just goes through and breaks the ankle. And that's what people don't fully comprehend. It's like, oh, it's all right, it's only rain, it's only wet. No, it's the danger of what could happen.
Well, quite.
That we have to be sort of cognizant of.
Yeah.
And the girls and the boys like, oh, we want to play. It's like, yeah, unfortunately, we have to be the grown-ups in the room.
I know, and I remember that was a frustration when I played adult 11-a-side, and was one of the catalysts, I suppose, for giving that up. Simply because there were, for 3 months of the year, you'd wake up on a Saturday ready to go, and then it would get called off. Now, what's different, I suppose, well, is we've just talked about, to be fair, with the youngsters, is that we have a responsibility, an accountability for their safety and their welfare when they're with us, when they're on our grounds, when they're under our charge. And that, as frustrating as it might be for us, we have to get over it, effectively.
On the cold weather front, the only good thing on the horizon is they get older and move to afternoon games. And I say that because I can remember one of the teams.
There's been a few.
Not this one. We were playing Henbury, and every game in Bristol was called off in the morning. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh, and they were like, well, it is frozen, but part of the pitch is in the sunlight. Okay. And we went there, and by the time we got there, at sort of 1:30 in the afternoon, 2/3 of the pitch was in sunlight and had thawed. And the ref got there, and he said, well, wait half an hour. And he stomped around on it, and by then, the whole pitch was in sunlight, and it was thawing, and we waited till about 2:30 to kick off. The pitch was fine. The sun had, So by playing in the afternoon, it allowed that time for it to actually thaw out. So I know it means you've got to wait a few years to get older, but it's amazing that when it is the cold and frozen pitches, just that difference between the morning and afternoon can mean the difference between you're on or you're off.
Yeah,
so even that little thing can make a difference. But mornings are very difficult. When you come down here training, we train at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. You come down here. And the thing is, of course, you can also remember back to when you were playing. Because I can remember playing for a team. We went to Marshfield, and I'm playing against Marshfield, and I'm quite literally kicking ice off my boots every 2 minutes as the game's going on. We finished the game, absolutely finished the game. Then we went to the pub afterwards, as you do. Yeah. But they're adults. That's what we're adults. We do that. You can't do that with the kids, obviously. But I was kicking lumps of ice off of my boots. It was that cold. It hadn't started snowing until we got there, but it started snowing so much and cooled down so much in the 90 minutes that we had to finish the game though.
Yeah, and there you go. See, finish the game, and the.
But we were adults, and
indeed, and the worst one I had was kind of in between. It was a for some reason I've been selected to play a county representative game. And anyone listening has seen me play, you'd understand that's quite something. Anyway, and it was must have been about 15, something like that, and it was the worst hail I've ever experienced. To the extent that we carried on playing through the start of it because, it's an important game, and we must get through this, and we will play on. Stiff upper lip and all that. And anyway, we played for about a minute more, got called off, but the game wasn't called off. We got called off the pitch, told to wait, stand, go shelter under a tree, whatever it might be, but the game will be finished. And I feel like we've come on from that, particularly from a kids' football perspective.
I don't know. Only in the sense of if you're looking at the clouds and there's one dark cloud, but you're looking across and the wind's blowing and everywhere else looks lighter, then there is a chance that this looks like it's going to blow over in 10 minutes. Yeah. Go back in. Because now everyone should have changing rooms. One of the league rules is everyone has changing rooms.
Yeah.
So you should be able to go in the changing rooms, keep yourself warm, and in 10 minutes, if it's blown over and stopped, Whereas you're right. Back when I was playing, we'd get some places, and is there changing rooms? No, it's the cars. So you had nowhere to shelter, nowhere to keep warm.
Yeah.
If it's dark and really dark and menacing across the entire sky, then I'd be there like, come on, we're going, we're done. I'd just be the same. I'd be like, no, we're done now. I don't care, we're going. Well, we'll take the points. We'll take the points then, personally. I wouldn't care. Welfare
Yeah.
to me is the most important thing.
Yeah, quite.
But yeah, if it's like just a dark cloud and it's raining and hell, but it looks like it's going to clear quickly, in the change rooms, warm up, come back out, get yourselves re-warmed up, and if it's clear and it's properly clear, then I don't see an issue with that. But you've got to get them off the pitch straight away. I wouldn't wait.
Yeah, you would try and grit it better.
Get
through
them
it
off quickly,
until-
get
yeah,
them dry,
Yeah.
and then if it clears. If it goes on and it's sort of 20 minutes, it's half an hour, it's still going on, we're like, no, we call it. But there's a certain point where you think, it's only 5 minutes, and it's cleared, and you're looking up, and it's like, yeah, that's fine. Then yeah, I don't see an issue with that personally. I might get told off for this, but but no, I don't think there's an issue with that. I think you have to judge it by the shower. And as long as you've got the facilities to go and sit in and keep warm and keep dry, and it's only a short storm, you know, and it's not lightning.
No.
that's the one to go. I'll give you some stats actually while we're here. So, for those who don't know, we play on a floodplain. That's the first thing. So it's flooded. It's flooded actually really badly this year. This year has been a bad flood. But it's flooded in, so 2024 it's been a bad flood. It flooded badly in 23. It flooded in 2020. And then before that, 2014. So actually, we've only had 4 floods in the last 10 years, which for a floodplain isn't actually that bad.
And yet it feels like it's been so much more.
And last year, if you remember last year, it was, I think, 3, at most 4 weeks. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was a big one this year. And the 2014 one, and I remember that one because my last team, I think it was on the website, we didn't play for, I think it was something like 3 months. Quite literally a league game, but we didn't play a league game. No, didn't play at all for 3 whole months.
When was this?
The 2014, I think.
And so that was, I mentioned that earlier on, that because that would have been around about the time where I mentioned a few moments ago that when I was playing adult football, there was a horrendous winter where it would just be Saturday after Saturday after Saturday
that's
after
possibly
Saturday.
the one.
That'd be
Yeah,
it, yeah.
Yeah.
around
If
that
you go on
time.
the Fives website, there is a one with my team, and it says we finally play again, and it's 3 whole months where we finally played a game because it was so bad. But that wasn't just here. People say, "Oh, we play on a floodplain." We're not the only teams cancelling games.
Absolutely not. No.
You know, back then we cancelled for 13 weeks. It was home and away. You know, so
Yeah.
but that's the floodplain. It was looking at the most recently. It was a wetter than average February in the south of England. Wettest February since records began in 1836.
Yep.
With many parts of southern England recording well over twice the average rainfall. March, England saw 62% more rainfall than an average March, although the total for the month, 94.3 mils, was not even close to record levels, ranking as just the 19th wettest March since data began. So it's only just in the top 20 of wettest Marches. But it's still 62% more rainfall than an average March.
Blimey.
And just one from the Met Office, for each 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, the atmosphere can hold 7% more water vapour. So for every 1 degree of global warming, winters will be 7% wetter.
Blimey.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, one last thing on that. About 10 years ago, one of the councils put in 2 massive wells down by Willsbridge. And that was back about 2014. And it kind of stopped the floods. And even the one, like I said, it didn't flood again until like 2020, and even that wasn't a massive flood. But I don't know how true this is, but somebody said the golf course up at Stockwood has then done something to make it an all-weather golf course.
It is very proudly, played there several times, it is very proudly a course which only shuts on Christmas Day and maybe Boxing Day.
And it's made some drainage issues up there. And since then, was that 2 years ago maybe? It happened 2-3 years ago?
Couldn't say.
Since then we flooded twice. Now, is there a link? People who I talk to suggest there is a link between, since they put the drains in 10 years ago down at Walsbridge, it's barely flooded here. And now about 2 or 3 years ago, they did this work up there to make it an all-weather area. and we're starting to flood again. Because, that's the thing. If you do work upstream, it
Yeah, of
floods
course it does.
downstream. So is that one of the reasons the water is being pushed down off the hills up there, down into here? I don't know, but that's one of the things that's being suggested. I don't know how true that is, only because where that is, the water wouldn't really run our way. So I don't know how true that is. Or if it does, it would run...
I think it would. It might end up
Run
in the
downstream.
Chew, down to the Chew,
Or down the Avon almost.
and then come into the Avon, and then come round
No,
our
because
horseshoe.
where they are, the Chew is kind of the other side of the hill from them. If anything, it's going to run down towards, I suppose, the Avon, isn't it?
Should we do a future podcast on
Maps.
local irrigation
Yes.
downstream impacts?
The Environment Agency are getting involved in our next podcast. Anyway, so that's some weather situations, yeah. But yeah, so flooding, yeah, we've had 2 in the last 2 years, but only 4 in the last 10.
Yeah, it feels like a lot more.
It does, but like I
feel
said,
a
with
lot more,
global
yeah.
warming, there is a chance it will.
It's
flood.
just you get more
will.
frequent and more intense events, effectively. I'm very mindful that we've done what all British people tend to do and ended up talking about the weather at great length. But does lead nicely into the impact that has on fixtures.
Now, before we go into fixture congestion, I've got a few stats on fixture congestion, but I will say my under-16s on Sunday play the first of 7 matches in 15 games.
7 matches in 15
15
days.
15 days, sorry.
15 days.
7 matches in 15 days
7 matches in
because of
15
how many
days.
we've had to postpone. So it's along the lines of Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. Yeah. And some of those players play for Saturday teams as well. So they'll be playing on a Saturday, and at least one of they'll have at least one midweek game for that Saturday team as well.
Blimey.
Yeah.
I remember in adults football we would have double fixtures at times. So if you'd lost a game earlier in the season, at the home match, and then you were playing the away match, you'd put 2 games in one, and oh my God, they were not high quality games.
No, I mean, like, 1 or 2 of these could have been done as double fixtures, but of course they've been rearranged at different times.
Yeah, of course,
and
yeah.
So potentially these could have been double fixtures, but they already put
7
in
in 15 days.
7 in 15 days, yeah. Which leads us on to fixture congestion. So I will let me come back to my stats and stuff. So, a report entitled "Extreme Calendar Congestion: The Adverse Effects of Player Health and Wellbeing" was released at the end of last season and looked at the impact of the first ever mid-season World Cup in Qatar. And it warned that overlapping competition schedules and all the travel and so on and so forth. On an individual level, there's sort of quite concerning findings, and footballers are now playing way more competitive minutes at their age than their predecessor, and it basically increases risk of long-term injuries and shortened careers. So at 22 years old, Vinicius Junior had already played over 18,000 minutes for Real Madrid in Brazil, more than double what Ronaldinho's minutes at the same age. Pedri had made 73 appearances for club and country during 2020-2021 and amassed over 12,000 minutes, which is over 20% more than Xavi did at the same age. Kylian Mbappe played nearly 50% more minutes than Thierry Henry did at 24, and then the same goes for Jude Bellingham when compared to Wayne Rooney. Insurance group Howden published its European Football Injury Index for the 22-23 season and found that Qatar World Cup led to players from European top leagues spending an average of 8 days longer on the treatment table than the previous season. Ankle injuries were up 170%, calf and shin injuries 200%, and hamstring injuries saw a 130% spike in one season. Multiple studies have examined injury patterns in relation to fixture congestion. A study conducted by Ekstrand et al. In 2011 analysed injury data from multiple European soccer leagues and found a significant increase in the incidence of injuries during the periods of fixture congestion. Specifically, muscle injuries, joint sprains, and overuse injuries. Muscle injuries were the most common type during football. It basically occurred when players have less recovery time between matches, which was sort of brought on by fatigue and inadequate rest intervals, which compromised players' muscle function and increased susceptibility to injuries. And it also, fixture congestion impacts players differently based on their position. So midfielders and forwards who engage on frequent sprints and abrupt changes in direction may face higher risk of muscle injuries, as goalkeepers who have repetitive nature of their movements with different injuries for different movements. Fatigue plays a pivotal role in the increased risk of injuries during fixture congested periods, and a study by Ranama et al. In 2010 found that players' muscle strength and neuromuscular control decline significantly after a congested period of matches. Fatigue can lead to altered movement patterns, decreased coordination, and a compromised ability to stabilise joints, all of which contribute to higher risk of injuries. And the intense schedule of matches can impose significant cardiovascular strain on players. Rapid recovery periods between games may not allow for adequate recuperation of the cardiovascular system, leading to elevated heart rates, blood pressure, and the potential for irregular heart rhythms. Prolonged exposure to these conditions can have long-term implications for players' heart health. Now, I mean, those studies obviously were based on elite level players.
Of course.
But, as I just said, my players are about to play 7 games in 15 days. Our girls, at this moment, we're going through two games a weekend.
We are, yeah.
You know, now, it's not the same, but these young girls are developing as players.
Yeah, there's well, I mean, there's loads of those stats, isn't there? To be fair, I mean, you started by talking about the relative minutes of young superstars now, as opposed to those of perhaps 15, 20 years ago. And I mean, really great example. We're recording this on a Thursday night. Last night was saw Barcelona in quarter-final of the Champions League, and they played the two youngest Champions League quarter-final players ever.
Yes.
So
PSG.
there you go, and whether that's and you mentioned players like Bellingham, Mbappe, and others, whether that's a symptom of the elite game having got so much faster that that kind of, I suppose, youthful athleticism, dynamism is so much more valuable now in the elite game, or whether it's a cause of it having got so much faster, I don't know, which is which way around the cause and effect is on that. But also the impact that you mentioned right at the end there around, we see that in junior football. We see that in adult football as well. I mean, I mentioned the time we've had double fixtures, and the quality is just through the floor because you're exhausted, or you're trying to save yourself for the second game, and then you kind of save your energy if you're not doing so well in the first game. Of course, we're working and coaching and mentoring and all those great things with really young people who perhaps can't self-regulate in the same way that you might be able to as an adult if you had a really tough fixture list.
Well, this is it. Yeah. So we've got our girls. We say, okay, it's a big pitch. It's not a 5v5, but it is for them. And we want you to kind of hold these positions and midfielders to do this. And they go on the pitch and they'll run up and down, And if it's a double fixture, they're going to try and run up and down for both fixtures, aren't they?
Yep.
As you say, exactly that.
Yeah, indeed. And interesting. So we go to one of the big things, of course, we've been trying to focus on the past couple of months when we have been able to train, because it's either been, A, you need the weather, and B, you need to not have a fixture reorganised for the Saturday morning. That's why we've tried to have a real focus on space and using big pitches, and why you've organised a number of our matches now to be 7-a-side, vice 5-a-side, in a kind of readiness for next season. Now, interestingly, we had the 5-a-side game on Sunday, and when I mentioned it was 5-a-side, all of the girls, without exception, said that they wished it had been a 7-a-side match because they preferred the bigger pitch.
Oh,
Which
that's
is really
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I was
good.
really surprised, really taken aback by that. But it does show that maybe, hopefully, it shows that what we're trying to teach them about space and use of space. And again, we mentioned on one of the really good discussion on one of the other podcasts around using the space of the pitch in attack, really compacting that space in defence. Absolutely right. Really interesting that hopefully that's them kind of taking on and recognising that a bigger pitch and more of them playing at the same time, maybe that's the real motivator here, less sub time. But a bigger pitch, of course, then you get that, as you mentioned, that the I suppose the lack of discipline because they are certainly in our team, they're 7, 8 years old, and they are just, I will just keep running. And actually, to a great extent, it's incumbent upon us to recognise when they've perhaps done too much running and they are just running up and back and up and back and up and back and up and up and back again.
And you find it's sometimes the better players who run up and down, and we've always got to say, you have to come off. Even though we know you are a better player, you have to come off because you're going to run yourself into the ground. And interestingly, actually, we've got 1 or 2 players who have identified themselves as defenders, and they don't run up and down. So they know they've like, this is my position, and I know this, and I will go up and I will come back. But generally, I hold this position.
Indeed, and I found that a real, all the way back to the, I suppose, right at the start of this conversation, Andy, around what's been different. What have I learned that's kind of not there on the course? And of course, it was 3 evenings for a month and some e-learning and stuff like that. As I said, really fascinating. But the reality that I've found is that we've had conversations before around at what stage do you start to kind of adopt a position. And I have that conversation about elite footballers as well, can't nail down a position and that kind of stuff. We've had some of those conversations over the past year or so. I feel like it's just naturally happening and organically happening, and I do feel really lucky with the group of girls that we've got that we've got a real good spread, actually. So we don't have, and this is fair to say, we don't have a group of headless chickens.
No.
We don't have a group of selfish, dribble by myself, school want to be the hero players. That's all.
And for the benefit of our listeners, when we say about organically happening, what we have been doing is every single game, if it's a 40-minute game, is every 10 minutes, everyone gets a chance. Everyone is basically moved around positions. So all the players will go up front. All the players will go in defence. Okay, it's your turn to go in midfield. It's your turn. So they're all going most weeks. Most weeks they are all going, including in goal, different positions. And yet we are already starting to see certain players, they know positions and they like that position and they're getting good at it, even though we're still saying it's your turn to go, say if it's the defender, your turn to go up front. But they like that go up front. It's interesting. Like we'll talk about, say, Freya. We know she's a defender. She's a good defender and she likes that. But give her that 10-minute stay up front, and she loves it. But once it's over, it's like, back in defence, Freya? Yeah! So it's quite good, but it's organically happening. But it's not like we've pushed them there, because we are rotating those positions every single week, every 10 minutes. So they are going around. It's not like we're sort of pushing them into it. But what is also good is they're all learning those positions. So they're all getting an understanding of what it's like to be a forward, what it's like to be a midfielder, what it's like to be a defender, and even what it's like to be a goalkeeper.
Yeah, indeed.
In fact, and there is another discussion for another podcast, by the way. If anyone's rating, we are going to do that one as well at some stage.
No, you're right. I think, it's being, I'm quite self-critical anyway. I think it could be better at that, if I'm honest, particularly when I'm, Mark on a previous podcast was talking about how he really struggles kind of in his to keep probably not the right way to describe it, to be fair, but he really stressed the importance of himself being impartial when he's refereeing his own team, and the coaches are doing sideline changes, the shouts, the calls, the subs, all the other stuff. Found that really difficult to do. I wondered if you feel the same when you see, as the manager of the under-8s, when you see myself or Marios
Do you want
or
honesty,
Phil
here? Do
Leland.
you want honesty here?
Absolutely, well, yes.
Under-8 girls, no, because they're just playing friendlies, they're just learning, and they're just having fun as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Under-16 boys, absolutely. When
Polar opposite.
When changes are made, that I'm like, why is that change being made? I wouldn't have done that. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? God, no, don't do that. Don't change that. Don't do that. Oh, I would never do that. But I'm like kind of like, although we have another qualified ref, I tend to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas the girls, because it's their first year of playing matches, and we don't actually get to games that matter, apart from the cup games. Both cup competitions we've been in with A division teams, so from the start we've known we're not going to get there.
We were. It was. Yeah, they
Both
were.
cup
They were
games,
difficult.
both groups we've been in. It's
They were
like
difficult.
we knew we weren't going to. So in both those spots, this station, every league game is like it's just friendly. There's learning. Until they're under 12s, I think it is. It's just league games. It's just friendly. There's learning. So from that point of view, and I know that you're rotating and you're giving everyone an opportunity in different positions, and just so no, I'm quite happy with that. But no, with the boys, I'm like, no, don't change him. What are you taking him off for? Why is he going left? Why is he going right? Why is he going back? Yeah, it is completely different. But we're in a competitive league. We're trying for this. We're trying to win this. I mean, Mark will tell you, cup game, quarter final, 3-0 up at half time, and then with 20 to go, he took off centre midfielder and centre back, and suddenly they're 3-2, and it's 10 to go, and we're hanging on. And I was refereeing it, and I was like, when he took the 2 off, I was like, why are you taking them 2 off? And then it's 3-1, 3-2, and I'm like, you going to bring them back on? He didn't, and we held on. But
So I had a very similar experience this weekend, actually, where, and again, this is something that is has been a real eye-opener. Every weekend, every training session, every match, learned something different about myself, about good stuff, bad stuff, from other people, from yourself, from Marios, Phil, Liam, Rachel, everybody else who's helped out with our under-8s. But this weekend, this match was a real eye-opener again to how you can kind of call something quite catastrophically badly, really. 4 quarters of 10, 3-0 up after the first 10. Pretty good performance, pretty solid. And in the interest of what we were talking about 5 minutes or so ago, providing some rotation, some opportunity in trying to ensure as best you can an even split of minutes and ball time and all that kind of stuff. Made a change, and then 10 minutes later, after they'd made changes as well, we were 5-3 down. And that was almost like, I genuinely can't think of the right word to describe it, but it was like being just hit 5 times in a row, basically. And I had this real dilemma in my head, because I knew what I'd done was for the right reason, at the right time, with what was in front of me. And it's something anybody, it's really good advice for anybody, I suppose. Make a decision based on the information you've got at the time, and can you justify it afterwards. That was what I knew at the time, and did the best I could, which I did. But in hindsight, it was just so badly wrong. And then we were really struggling from that point on. Managed to stabilise things, did that really well. But the dilemma I had was when I could see this happening and see this unfolding, I had to think, I've made a change. If this was not 7 and 8 year old girls, I would probably change this back pretty quick because I could see what was happening.
yeah.
Or if it was an adult game or professional life or whatever it might be, and I could see a decision I was going the wrong way, I'd pull it back. What that would have involved on Sunday could have been quite detrimental to 1 or 2 of the girls in the team. So I made the call. I would let this happen because there would have had to most likely have had to have been a substitute involved, and that one player who comes off then, no matter how many times we might want to drill it into them, it's not you, it's just all gone a bit wrong, I need to make a change. They're 7, 8 years old, and you see that in professional football where a manager might make a sub after. If a manager makes a sub in the first half, that player is absolutely incandescent that they've been the one that's been singled out for a collective failure, which is what a team game is. So I had this real dilemma, and it was a real. I will never forget that game on Sunday afternoon because of what happened in that 10-minute window.
But as a club, our policy is to rotate the players.
Yeah.
So it was always going to happen. It could have happened in the last 10. What could you have done differently, though? Did you take... How many subs did we have?
1.
So all you did was, take our arguably strongest player off?
It worked. I took off one of the more developed players in the kind of... You're 3-0 up, playing well, pretty controlling as much as a under 8s game can have a team in control. We did. And it coincided, that my change coincided, I think, with the other team, who, let's not forget as well, as you mentioned, were a league above us, are a league above us as well. I think perhaps realising maybe we need to bring on our more developed
So
players.
they would have probably done
Both
that
happening at the
anyway.
same- Indeed.
And it,
Indeed. And it may have turned out the same way.
And it may have turned out the same way.
Or worse. Or even worse than it did. Who knows?
So-
But a real one that will stay with me. And you'll have plenty of, you've mentioned them on previous podcasts and conversations and stuff. Everybody who has any involvement in this kind of will have a series of those moments, whether it's been less than a year or 30 years, that never go out of their head. And they always learn something from all of them.
I tend not to bring players off who've just gone on, but I have, especially when you get to 11 aside, change formations mid-game.
Yeah.
And if it means going 4-5-1 just to shore things up, or even 5-4-1, I've done that.
Yeah.
And it got us to half time, and then it's like, right, okay, how can we now reassess? And that's what you can do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to end this pod now. We're not ending the chat. We're ending We're going to call this part 1, and then we'll record part 2 in 2 weeks' time. In 5 minutes, and and that will be out 2 weeks from now. But for now, Simon, thank you very much for joining me,
Thanks for having me.
and hopefully you'll come back in 2 weeks' time, 5 minutes, and record another one with me
A quick personal needs break and I'll be right back.
Yes.
Yeah, in 2 weeks' time.
in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much, and listeners, thank you very much as well. Good night.
If you like this podcast, then please email us your questions, comments, random thoughts, anything you want to share with us at greengrassroots@gmail.com. You can contact Mark and Andy through X at Fry Club JFC or Ben at Red Falcon JFC, on Facebook via Fry Club Junior FC or Red Falcon Sport. The Fry Club JFC website is www.fryclubjfc.co.uk, and the Red Falcon Insta page is at Red Falcon JFC. You could also type out a fantastic review on Apple Podcasts or give us 5 stars on Spotify. You've been listening to a We Haven't Got a Clue What We're Doing production, produced and edited by Andy Glover.